maybe while we're waiting, I'll do a brief introduction. So my name is Bibi. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a Stop Rosebank organizer with Tipping Point. Tipping Point is the collective who is behind this workshop. And we've got Rona here, who's my co-facilitator. Maybe Rona, introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I think there's a lot of familiar faces here, but I'm Rona, my pronouns are she, her. I work with Bibi at Tipping Point on the Stop Rosebank campaign, mostly organising these trainings. I'm really excited to do this one because we haven't done it for Stop Rosebank before. We've done it for a few other groups, but I think it's a really lovely one to do especially for a group of people who are all working on one campaign. So I'm really excited to see so many people here, especially since it was rescheduled. But yeah, looking forward to getting going.
Great. So I think we'll start just because it's nearly 5 past. Great to see everyone. Oh, Lucy from Glasgow joining from Uganda, amazing. Thibaut from France also joining in from Peru. Great to see everyone's spread across the world. So yeah, welcome to this Stop Rosebank Artivism training, this interactive workshop where we're going to come up with loads of fun ideas. But as a sort of icebreaker, it would be great to hear what everyone's superpower is. And it can be anything from, you know, something like taking notes or cooking for big groups of people. My superpower, for example, is organizing raves. Organizing parties. I'm going to organize climate raves where we raise funds for climate action groups in the global south. So yeah, that's my superpower. So I will pass it on to someone, and please tell us your name, your pronouns, and your superpower, and then pass it on to someone else. So briefly, the agenda. So we've just done our introductions. We're going to talk about what Artivism is and what we've already seen in the Stop Rosebank campaign so far, messaging and tactics, and then we'll break off into breakout groups and discuss some very fun ideas and how we can turn those ideas into action plans. So yeah, that's gonna be the format of this 1 hour and a half session. So we'll finish at 7:30 tonight. So
yes, thank you, Bibi.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Rona.
Thank you, Bibi. We're just going to start with like a kind of very short presentation, and then we're going to move into the interactive bits, because I think this workshop really, the value comes from the chatting and the idea generation, but just a little bit of framing, I guess. I think the term Artivism you maybe will have heard before, but it's basically a combination of art and activism, as you can probably guess. So it's the idea of using art and creative means, not necessarily just visual, but kind of audio or music or kind of all sorts of things, as a way of communicating messages and taking our activism maybe a little bit further. So the idea is that to kind of change the world, we must first change the story. So like, I'm sure as activists, you're really aware of the importance of messaging and getting kind of campaign ideas across. And Artivism can be a really useful way of disrupting the status quo, that's a hard word, through creative means, because it proposes new stories or new frames, new ways of looking at things. And it opens up space that politics can then move into. So the idea is that kind of like art is this like way of showing a future and showing a different way of doing things, that we as activists can then use to communicate our messages. So this photo I really love. I was introduced to this photo during doing this training myself a few years ago, but it's from COP21, which was a while ago now, in Paris. And these are giant inflatable CO2 bubbles. And the French police, I'm sure a lot of you will know, have a reputation for being really violent, really nasty, just didn't know what to do with them and ended up playing football with the activists on the street with these giant inflatable CO2 bubbles, which I think is just a really lovely way of showing the kind of value that art and creative means can have in activism. So I think this is the next slide. Thank you. I hate showing my slides because I can't see what the next slide is going to be. But this is the next slide. This is, I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of these actions because they're all part of the Stop Rosebank or the Stop Cambo campaign, and there's loads that aren't pictured here, like for example the out of sync swimmers that I'm assuming Pippi you were part of. I was trying to find a photo and I couldn't. I wanted to put this on here, but I couldn't find it. But we've got pictured here. The one on the top left is actually just from this weekend, which was the paddle out wave of resistance. I think this picture is from Aberdeen, and it was basically a bunch of surfers and kayakers kind of using their sport as a way of demonstrating their resistance to Rosebank. And then we've also got a street mural, which was during COP27, a defund climate chaos one. A few different things from Roses Against Rosebank, which was really lovely. Part of the Stop Rosebank campaign, making paper roses, and they were used in lots of different campaigns, lots of different moments. And then also a few from Stop Jackdaw and Stop Rosebank, Stop Jackdaw and Stop Cambo. For those of you who've been around for a little while, there's the giant paper-mache jackdaw outside the UK government building in Edinburgh, which is definitely still one of my favourite actions. It's just so creative and so fun. And then some barrels from Stop Cambo, which was way at the start of the Stop Cambo campaign, almost 2 years ago now, so a really long time. And there's obviously countless other ways that Stop Cambo and Stop Rosebank and Stop Jackdaw have used Artivism that aren't pictured here. I'm sure there's lots of you have been involved in, which haven't got pictures on this slide, but are also really effective ways of communicating messages in a creative way. I think I'm now going to pass on to Bibi. We'll see what the next slide is. No, I'm not going to pass on to Bibi. It's still me. So I mentioned a few times messaging, and I think Artivism is a really key way to kind of get across messages in a creative way, because often just using kind of words and maybe less exciting and less creative ways of communicating doesn't get the message across as effectively or reach as many people. So just as a way of kind of setting up this workshop, we're going to have a little think about, in the Stop Rosebank campaign, what are the key messages that we want to campaign. So for example, what climate impacts we want to highlight with the Stop Rosebank campaign, and how does this fit into our broader work? Maybe thinking about whose voices we want to amplify and who's the target of these protests. So we could obviously spend hours discussing the key messages of the Stop Rosebank campaign, but we're just going to take a few minutes and maybe just put in the chat some key messages that you think Stop Rosebank is trying to communicate. So if everyone wants to like have a little idea generation in the chat, and I'll read out some of the stuff that's going in there. Let me know if you want me to stop screen sharing so you can see each other. Would that be better? Or maybe we'll keep them up.
I think it's okay.
Okay, cool. So I guess thank you, Catherine. Yeah, CO2 equivalent of Rosebank being the 28 lowest income countries, or 700 million people. It's just an insane campaign message, and one that's been really crucial. New oil and gas exploration is incompatible with a safe future. Definitely so key to all of the Stop Cambo, Stop Rosebank, Stop Jackdaw campaigns. For those of you who don't know, this is because the Stop Rosebank and Stop Cambo are both in an area of the North Sea which interacts, what they would interfere with the habitat of cheesy bottom sponges, which is just an excellent name for some sponges, and generates some really exciting campaign messages. Any other key campaign messages that we can think of? Sarah saying the UK government is paying millions of for Rosebank, but profits are exported. Yeah, that's such a key one, like countering that narrative that the money from Rosebank is going to go to the UK public. Livable future, absolutely, such a key one for all climate campaigning. Oh, the negative impacts, health impacts for local communities and biodiversity, definitely a really important one, Thibaut, linking to the cheesy bottoms as well. And the impact on the ecosystem on the North Sea. Yeah, definitely. I think the Wave of Resistance campaign recently highlighted a lot of that as well, which is a really key one. Tax breaks, yeah, absolutely. Especially when we're kind of in a cost of living crisis, talking about the tax breaks that corporations like Equinor are getting. Such a key one as well. Nice. Any other last key campaign messages before we move on? Cool. In that case, I'm going to leave it there. But yeah, just a reminder to think about when we're thinking about Artivism, it's so easy to get carried away with really like exciting ideas, which are obviously great, but it's crucial that we also tie these back to our key campaign messages so that we can get our point across. Cool. I am gonna, one last one, Norwegian government and the main stakeholder. Yeah, absolutely. And a really important one when we're communicating with Norwegian public as well, which has been a really key part of the Stop Rosebank campaign. Nice. I think now I am going to pass on to BB. Let's just double check. Yeah, cool. I'm going to pass on to BB, who is going to take us through some different like breakdown of different Artivism tactics, starting with the visuals.
Yes, thank you, Rhoda. You were too keen to pass it on earlier. Yeah, so there's a couple of different, actually many different tactics you can use in doing Artivism, but I'm just going to go briefly over the three tactics that we've chosen for this workshop before we go into more of a brainstorming session. So the first one is visual. As you can see, having really powerful and strong visuals in local communities can highlight global climate impacts and can send a really strong message. So you see the COVID memorial, which is that's the one in London, I think, which obviously highlighted all the people that lost their lives during the COVID crisis. You see projection, which is the climate crisis, the health crisis. I think that was by MedAct. And tribute walls. So I think that one was from the Black Lives Matter period, where people put up their names and loved ones of people that lost their lives during that time. So yeah, it can visuals are just a really strong way of directly confronting the viewer with a message and yeah, sparking like an emotional reaction from the person who's viewing it. And we'll pass on to the next slide. So next one is audio. So this can be sound, stories and songs, lifting up the stories of frontline resistance. And for this one, we actually have a short 1 minute clip from an example of that, which when Rona and I were discussing this earlier, we were thinking like, oh, you don't see, or we haven't seen many audio actions, like creative actions so much, because sometimes they can be more difficult to do, but actually it's a really powerful tactic of conveying a message. But yeah, we'll see that in this little example as well.
I'm going to see whether this is going to work with the sound. Just bear with me. I'm going to play a clip. So this is like a really long clip. It's 11 minutes long, and it was developed during COP26 and used quite a few times. It's super powerful. I remember listening to it on the bus on the way from Edinburgh to Glasgow during COP26, and it made me cry. I was very stupefied, but it is super powerful. I'd really encourage you to listen to the whole thing if you have a chance. But I'm just going to see if I can play a 1 minute clip. We'll see if this is going to work.
It is a great example of how powerful audio can be, and in this, so to give you a little bit of context, is the Lloyd's of London that's being addressed in this clip is an insurer's marketplace that insure loads of fossil fuel projects, and yeah, in that obviously destroying the lives of many communities. But yeah, would definitely recommend listening to that in full if you've got time, and get some tissues when you do. We'll move on to the next one. So yeah, the third one that we chose is movement and body. So that those are actions or activities that allow people to emotionally connect with climate collapse. You see the red ladies pictured, who I think are sort of an offshoot of XR, or they're always at XR protest, who did a small pilot memorial outside the Lloyd's of London, which again is that insurance marketplace that insure things like the West Cumbria coal mine, and also the Cambo oil field throwback. But yeah, so that was a really, I think whenever they're there, they are really good at conveying like something really serious and frightening, but also sort of in a beautiful way. And it always makes people stop and stare and think, oh, what's going on, especially for people that are just, walking by on the street. It's a very striking image, and it can convey something very powerful. And yeah, also they're pictured is also great at picking news coverage. Very true, Catherine. They always make some waves. So yeah, that's a way to use your body or movements in conveying something that's really important and scary. But yeah, so these are 3 tactics that we chose, and we're going to get into some more fun now, which Rona will explain.
Nice, thank you, Bibi. I think because there's 10 of us, excluding Bibi and I, so we're just going to have 2 breakout groups with 5 people each around visuals and audio. Maybe Bibi, could you share the link to the slides in the chat just while I introduce the idea for the breakout rooms? So we're just going to have, I think, 15 minutes. Sorry, I can't see the information because I'm screen sharing, but I think we have 15 minutes, so we'll come back together around 10 to discuss, but we'll have one breakout group which is focused on visuals, so you can think about like the climate impacts idea. Maybe you can think about other stuff as well, but I think the idea is that visuals is often quite well tied to climate impacts and connecting powerful and emblematic images to the kind of entities funding them. So I guess in this case Equinor, but also the UK government and any kind of targets who are enabling Rosebank to happen. And then the second breakout group will focus on frontline resistance. So an example would be that that audio clip that we just listened to a little bit of, but you could also think about music or kind of playing clips of speeches from activists elsewhere, or anything really. So like thinking about how we can connect Rosebank to the people who are going to be impacted most by it, not necessarily just outside the UK, but you could also think about people working in the oil industry in the northeast, or anyone who's going to be impacted in any way by Rosebank if it happens. So we have 15 minutes, and on the slides that Bibi just put in the chat, you should have a slide each. So slide 10 will be the visuals and slide 11 will be the audio. Just ignore the little crosses that are in the corner of the slide for just now. But you have these, I can see it, so you have these little bubbles, and the idea is just to get as many ideas down as possible. You can add more bubbles if you need to, add an extra slide if you run out. But just get as many ideas down, no matter how silly or wildly outrageous or undoable they seem. The idea is just to like get an idea generation going. Does that make sense?